wellness experts and course instructors. And Dr. Will Cole sees patients around the world via webcam consultations and locally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and at drwillcole.com. So without further ado, let's welcome up Dr. Will Cole.
You guys excited to talk about poop?
Yes.
You probably heard about it this weekend. We're gonna dig deeper. Okay, first time for everything. All right, to give you a little bit of background about myself, my doctorate is from Southern California University of Health Sciences in Los Angeles. My postdoctorate education and training is in functional medicine and clinical nutrition through the Institute for Functional Medicine and Functional Medicine University. Like was just said before, I'm one of MindBodyGreen.com's, one of their course instructors and wellness experts, and we see patients around the world via webcam consultation and locally in Pittsburgh. Anyone from Pittsburgh here? Nobody?
Philly.
All right, that counts. That counts for me. All right, here's MindBodyGreens. There's a couple functional medicine guys on there, like David Perlmutter, who was here this weekend, Amy Myers, who's here. Small group of people. All right. So let's go over, does anyone know about functional medicine? I think it's a good place to kind of frame the conversation. Maybe you've heard of the term. I think it's alternative. What the heck is it? Well, some core things that we do differently in functional medicine that is not done in mainstream medicine. Number one, we interpret labs using a thinner reference range. You guys, you know your labs from your PCP or endocrinologist. You get this reference range, right? And they say from X to Y, these are where your numbers should be. And if it's high or low, a bold font, you have a problem. Does anyone know how we get those reference ranges on a lab? Any good guesses? It's a statistical average of what population? The people who go to the lab. Who are people that typically go to labs?
Sick people.
People with health problems, people that are getting managed the medications, they don't feel well. There's a lot of people that go to their doctor to say, hey, I don't feel well. They get the labs ran, and the labs largely come back or entirely come back as normal, even though you know instinctively how you're feeling isn't normal. You're told you're just depressed, here's an antidepressant, you're just getting older, or you just need to lose weight, or they refer you to another specialist. What they're unintentionally saying is you're a lot like the other sick people that make up the population of that lab. Either they're not running the right labs, or they're not interpreting the labs they are running currently properly, or both. So in functional medicine, if you take people with health problems out of that reference range, what's left is a thinner range, where your body's functioning, where your body's thriving. There's a lot of people that are in that orange area that are symptomatic, they have increased risk factors, but they're told there's nothing wrong with them. The second thing we do differently in functional medicine is that we run more comprehensive labs to look at these aspects of one's health that give rise, these root cause issues that give rise to the ICD-10 codes, that give rise to the diagnosis codes. And number three, we realize everybody's different. There's not a cookie cutter approach to getting well. And what works for one person with an autoimmune issue, with the same autoimmune issue, the next person, it can flare them up. And the next person, you don't notice it making a difference in their life. So we try not to have a bias as, this is the route that everybody should do. Because I will be proven wrong with the next patient. And we have to look at their labs, we have to look at their health history, we have to look at what works in their life and what doesn't work in their life. So some commonalities between us and the paleo community is that we use food as medicine, we use botanical herbal medicines, we use lifestyle modifications, all the things you guys are learning here this weekend, but on a condition-specific, targeted basis based on labs. So, the microbiome. You guys, everybody heard of the microbiome, right?
Yep.
The microbiome, the small life. This is the term for the trillions of bacteria in your gut. And it's upwards of 100 trillion bacteria. And you have about 10 trillion human cells. You are, in effect, 10 times more bacteria than human, a sort of sophisticated host for the microbiome. And this is really the foundation of health. We learned this weekend, depending on the talks that you went to, that really it's the foundation of health. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, he said, all disease begins in the gut. And now really research is catching up with antiquity, that about 90% of all chronic diseases that we see today, at least to some degree, begin in the gut, if not entirely. So we're really looking at this in functional medicine as well. They represent over 9 million different genes compared to our 25,000, so genetically superior. And you have this microbiome immune system connection here. The microbiome is 80% of your immune system. And here's Hippocrates' quote. And some researchers agree and are saying, and we see this in functional medicine as well, it's a factor, or some say a precondition for autoimmunity. And this is a really interesting study, rather recent, 2015, looked at the immune system here at 75-80% of the immune system, and 20 MS patients, 40 controls, found that there was an imbalance in the microbiome leading to a decrease of Treg cells, a decrease of the aspects of the immune system that determine immunomodulation, immune balance. And then you also have what's called the gut-brain axis. Your gut is referred to in the medical literature as your second brain. I know I'm kind of weird, but the intestines, I think, kind of look like the brain. Do you agree with me? Have you thought about that before? It's actually formed from the same fetal tissue. So when you were growing in your mom's stomach, your gut and brain are formed from the same fetal tissue and inextricably linked for the rest of your life through the gut-brain axis. See, when people get nervous about speaking in front of, public speaking, they have to run to the bathroom. That's the gut-brain axis at work. And about 95% of your serotonin, your happy neurotransmitter, is made in the gut, stored in the gut, and it is a huge implication to something called the cytokine model of cognitive function. Basically, how inflammation impacts how your brain works. And the things that are going in your gut, your second brain, are influencing your first brain. This is another study looking at autoimmunity and specifically myelin sheath production that found that the gut bacteria actually determines myelin neurological production and its implications not only to MS, other autoimmune conditions, but to anxiety, depression, brain fog, ADD, ADHD, and autism. So this is looking at the implications of inflammation and the gut-brain axis for mental health. So we are complex. This training in the standard model of care is to diagnose the disease and match it with a corresponding drug. You have depression, here's an antidepressant. If you have high blood pressure, here's a lisinopril. It's sort of this medicinal matching game. Nobody is ultimately sick. I don't know if you agree with me. But nobody's ultimately sick from a medication deficiency. Would you agree with me?
Yes, absolutely.
Nobody's sick from a lack of pharmaceuticals in their body. So in functional medicine, we're deep sea diving. This is like the Titanic. Like there's just this little piece of ice, but really the 2/3 of the size of the iceberg is underneath the ocean. So we're going to go on a journey, guys. You ready for this journey?
Right, yep.
That was kind of weak, guys. Are you ready for this journey?
Yeah!
I can't be more excited than you guys. I have taught this before. That would be shameful. All right. So we're going to go over the 4 gut health problems that will wreck your health. First off, you do not have to have, and I said this at the gut panel, I didn't get to speak as much as I wanted to. It's all right. You don't have to have digestive symptoms to have digestive problems. You don't have to have gut symptoms to have gut problems. A lot of people are saying, yeah, I'm fine, I go to the bathroom, fine, I'm fine. I don't have any digestive microbiome issues. We find, clinically speaking, that the gut is as a factor to many people's overall health, even if they're having normal digestion. So let's dig deeper here. You have what's called SIBO. Have you heard of SIBO? It's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, this funny acronym, is normal bacteria growing where it shouldn't be. It's proliferating to the small intestines. It's impacting the balance of the microbiome. And the microbiome, like anything else in the body, like inflammation or hormones, it's not inherently bad, right? We just want balance of these. And it's subject to the Goldilocks principle, and not too hot, not too cold, not too much, not too little, but just right. SIBO is too much of a good thing growing in a place that it shouldn't be growing. So this can impact the immune system, and SIBO is really due to a decrease of something called MMC. It's not the Mickey Mouse Club. It's the other MMC. This is the science nerd MMC. This is migrating motor complex. This is when your gut wave-like motion isn't working well, and it's allowing, instead of it pushing back into the large intestine, it's growing up into the small intestine. And its decrease of MMC is due to many things. One of them is medication use, like NSAIDs, head traumas, as well as sporting injuries can decrease MMC. And we talked in the panel yesterday of how there is an autoimmune component to SIBO as well. So common SIBO gut digestive symptoms: constipation, diarrhea. It's very well linked in the medical literature to IBS issues, irritable bowel syndrome, cramping, heartburn and GERD, same deal as far as the research is concerned, nausea. But then there's this far-reaching implications. Because the gut is your foundation of health, it can impact the body systemically. SIBO is also connected to, in the medical literature, to type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions like type 1 diabetes, autoimmune thyroiditis, Hashimoto's disease, and you have what's called the gut-skin axis, so that can also impact acne, rosacea, and things like this. This is part of the puzzle, and fibromyalgia as well. And then we have microbiome imbalances. So these are more pathogenic bacteria and pathogenic yeast fungal overgrowths as well, and candida overgrowths, which we all have, but high levels of it are linked to an imbalance of the immune system, a triggering of inflammation in the body. So this is one of the labs we use for people to look at the landscape of the microbiome, to get a basic view of what's going on here, and seeing if that correlates with their symptoms and coming up with a treatment plan. But we have bacterial overgrowths here, we have yeast and fungal overgrowths, parasitic issues. This patient, guess what? She didn't have any digestive symptoms at all. She had anxiety and depression. We dealt with what was going on in her gut, and her anxiety and depression is gone. This is the impact of the second brain. You have another connection here between autoimmunity and the gut dysbiosis here. This is just studied looking at dysbiosis in the gut and its triggering of autoimmunity in MS. So here's the next one, food reactivities. Every food under the sun, when you're talking about these gut issues, can cause immunoreactivity, can cause inflammation. You know, if I see reactivities against kale or spinach, it's not kale or spinach's fault, it's these dysfunctions going on in the gut. So this mismatch between our genome, which hasn't changed in thousands of years, and the world that's around us, this mismatch is causing the triggering of these autoimmune inflammation spectrum issues. They may not be full-blown autoimmune conditions, but they are somewhere on this autoimmune inflammation spectrum. And again, with foods, what works for one person may not work for the next person. And there's some good, healthy paleo foods, and probably some of you sitting in the audience today, you know, they'll make you feel good. You actually feel worse on them. So we have to look at food reactivities for these type of cases. You heard of gluten, right? Yeah. This is definitely, you heard of the G word? Yeah. It's like a swear word here. Well, typically, maybe you guys are new to the paleo diet, and you're like, I don't even know if gluten is a problem for me. I felt fine on it, and I want to find out for sure. I'm just starting this paleo thing. I want to go find out for sure. You go to your doctor, and what do they run? They run an alpha-gliadin test, or they test you for celiacs, right? Yep. And maybe those come back negative, and you're excited. You celebrate. I'm not gluten sensitive. So you go to Olive Garden and get breadsticks or something like that. It is a that's like a two-piece puzzle, 2 pieces to about a 25-piece puzzle. And you can be negative to those 2 biomarkers and be positive to other ones. So this is a lab we run, Cyrex, really the gold standard in this field. Arista Vajdani is one of the leading immunologists looking at this. All of these labs and our training is really centered around the Cleveland Clinic's Functional Medicine Center and their model of care. So, interestingly enough, transglutaminase 3 and 6, which are other celiac biomarkers, show up when they're positive in celiac patients and people that are on the spectrum of autoimmunity as having little to no digestive symptoms, but they're having neurological symptoms. They're having runaway anxiety and depression and brain fog, or they're having skin lesions. And the overwhelming majority of people that have celiac disease actually have these neurological implications and skin issues. They won't show up on standard labs. All right, the next one would be cross-reactivity. This is sort of the case of mistaken identity. There's something called molecular mimicry, where the foods that are healthy foods, some of them, if you're eating gluten-free, if you're not entirely paleo, like rice or corn or quinoa, or, oh wow, we're really running out of time. I have so much good stuff for you guys. 10 minutes. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Okay, cool. So this is where you're eating clean, but you're still having problems. So some paleo foods like eggs, even dairy is on here, where it's not a dairy intolerance or an egg intolerance or sensitivity, it's a gluten intolerance to eggs. This is a great lab for people who eat paleo but are still having symptoms. Cross-reactivity. Number 4, leaky gut syndrome. You guys have heard this unfortunate term before, right? Like leaky gut, that's so gross. But this is hyperpermeability of the intestinal linings. Things are passing through the gut that shouldn't be passing through the gut. So things like undigested food proteins, like the ones we just talked about, and lipopolysaccharides, or LPS. These are bacterial endotoxins that can trigger inflammation throughout the body. Dr. Perlmutter talked about that yesterday. This is linked to many neuroinflammatory issues, many other inflammatory issues that we need to take into consideration. So, all of this list of things, in short, if you have a chronic health problem, this should be ruled out. Does this mean that everybody has this? No, I wouldn't go as far to say that. But I would say if you should look. You should find out if it's a factor for you or not, because statistically speaking, it's highly associated. So this is another test we run. Again, Cyrex test, great test, blood test to measure antibodies against lipopolysaccharides and occludin and zonulin, which are the proteins that govern gut lining permeability. Think of zonulin like a zipper, and occludin is this occluder. So we're looking at increased permeability there. And which one is going on inside of you? And really, the reality is, it could be all of those issues because your body's all interconnected, or it could be none of them. So we will have to do our due diligence from a clinical basis to see what's factor for you. This is a beautiful picture, isn't it?
Oh my Lord.
Dr. Terry Walls gave me this picture, and I have to give her credit for that. This is not her poop, but she said I could use it. But she did joke and said it was hers, but it's not. Okay, so we have to look at, again, I said digestive symptoms, you don't have to have digestive symptoms to have digestive problems, but this is a good self-diagnostic. I don't want to run labs. I just want to kind of get a basic view, and it'll work for a lot of people. So you guys know the Bristol stool chart, so take notes, take a picture, and we can see here that we have all the different types here, and its connection to maybe some of the things that are going on in your microbiome. You should be having, Dr. Wall says, 2 snakes a day. That's how she words it. So I just took it. All right. So, if you guys need this slideshow, just go to drwolcole.com and email us. We can send it to you. All right, so resistant starch is promising for improving human health. It affects the microbiome and mechanisms for prevention of colon cancer, diabetes, and obesity. So here's some resistant starch choices for you that are all paleo-friendly. Non-starchy vegetable and berry fibers, raw starchy vegetables, raw potato starch, which not a big fan of that, but green banana flour, plantain flour, chia or ground flax, inulin fiber, and larch, and legumes, which are soaked 24 hours and washed for people who do that sort of thing. All right, and cooked cold starchy vegetables. All right, so let's dig deeper. We don't have time to talk about all of this stuff, but we do have video courses on this at drwolcole.com to talk more at length about this, but your body's interconnected. You have what's called the gut-brain axis, and then you have what's called the brain hormonal axis. So your gut can really be the upstream aspect to brain hormonal problems, and that's what we see a lot, is that the gut-brain inflammation disconnection issue is actually decreasing neural output from the brain hormonal axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, the HPT, the thyroid axis, and the ovarian and testicular axis as well. So we have to look at the connection of the body, and it's all interconnected. So what would you think of me if my check engine light came on in my car and I just covered up the check engine light, kept on driving? What do you think of me? Normally I have someone like point to their spouse and say like, they do that. It's impending doom. You're in denial, right?
Yeah.
100,000 miles, he's done this. Okay, cool. So we have to dig deeper here. We have to look at comprehensive labs. Your symptoms that your body's giving you is a check engine light. And we go to the check engine light cover-up station, and we say, take this cover-upper and see you in 6 months. But our body is more intelligent than a car. Its check engine light gets brighter. So you go back and get more milligrams at the check engine light cover-upper station. Ultimately speaking, I love my Toyota, but I know that God is more intelligent. God is better than a Toyota engineer. And we have to look at what's going on. If you take your car to the mechanic, he doesn't just cover it up and say, see you in 6 months, right? If he does, get a new mechanic. But the reality is that he hooks your car up to what? A computer. And that's exactly what we do in functional medicine. We're looking at what's underneath the hood. So we're looking at we use food as medicine. We talked about this already. And, I want to talk about poop transplants, guys. You're going to have to go on drrollcole.com. Fecal transplants and helminth therapy with parasites as well. A lot of good stuff. But I think we're going to take questions now.